the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And it is time for Overreaction Tuesday. Bum-ba-da-bum. Here is Lynnell Willingham with his takes, which we will judge as overreactions or not. I'm sure the post game was just a delight on Sunday, Lynnell.
Yeah, I took it kind of hard because it's just frustrating. You know, when you look at this season as in its entirety and you go back to like what the dialogue was back in August, what the dialogue was back in the spring, I think what's happening right now is the complete opposite of what we all anticipated. I thought this defense would be the unit that leads this group to the promised land if they got there. And I thought we would have to work through Sam Howell's growing pains. And at this point, I thought he'd be way further behind than he actually is. Now, obviously, that's a positive, but I guess this is my first overreaction. We need wholesale changes on defense going into the offseason. Like, I think from coordinator to, I don't even think there's a player on this defense that shouldn't be considered expendable. I don't know how eager I would be to sign anyone to a contract extension right now on this defense. And I'm more so disappointed talking about defense with the play of our two defensive tackles, the two most talented guys left on this defense. Really felt like Sunday in particular against Seattle, they once again just weren't impactful enough for my liking in terms of them not maintaining their gaps on some of these runs that are happening on first and second down. I believe Ron talked about it yesterday. The reason Seattle was so successful offensively, to use Logan's phrase, it felt like death by 1,000 paper cuts with some of the 6 and 7 yard runs they're getting on first down. It kept them in these third and manageable situations, and they were able to convert at a pretty high clip. Tackling wasn't good all around. It just was a bad day defensively. And I think when you're in year 4 of running the same stuff with most of the same personnel, I think it's pretty inexcusable to have the type of issues Washington's having.
Yeah, so there's a lot there. Wholesale changes, yeah, for sure. Like, you need a couple players. They also need to get like guys back. I mean, Defoe to Percy. Like, what happens there? Hopefully in year number 2. Like, I mean, actually, the funny thing is, like, Percy.
He's out.
Percy actually had
playing Defoe.
I think, yeah. Well, I don't know if he's out playing like what Defoe was last year. Maybe what Defoe was earlier this year. He actually was way better on Sunday on second watch than I thought. I just, you can't every week as a safety be the last guy there and miss a tackle. Like,
yeah, it's a big part of the job.
That's that's like the most important part of the job in 2 weeks in running. Like, you give up a big play because Percy can't be your last line of defense reliably, at least yet. Maybe he's getting better. So that's good, but he's a young football player. Obviously Quan's going to continue to get better. Forbes has to be there, but he had his best game of the season against New England. Like, what does that look like? But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, they're a bottom 5, bottom 3 unit in every statistical category. Like, they're or all the big ones, like the composite, like yards, they're the worst. Points, they're the second worst. Explosives, they're giving up a ton. I think they're 30th in defensive DVOA. Like, they're just bad. And there is no good reason why they're this bad. But at this point, like, it's technique, it's consistency of execution. They just don't have good players. I mean, there's injuries that impact it. I know no one was like, oh yeah, Cody Barton, but like Barton to Mayo is a drop off. And you see on some big plays where there's some big plays where Mayo does really fantastic stuff because he's a good run player. And if you can get him in the flat, like, he's a sure tackler more often than not, but he's not the coverage player. He can't cover the space that Barton can. Davis has 10 tackles, but can he make a play? Like, you need him to be an inch taller on that play down in the fourth quarter where the ball goes right over his hands. I also think that this defense got hurt when James went out. Like, FA is kind of more of a freelancing type of player, and he creates a little bit of pressure here, but like, he's out of his gap on a run there, and James is just more solid for what this defense needs. But then if you have James on one side or Casey on one side, can you get an impact rusher on the other and like get more pressure off the edge? I think John played better on Sunday than people realize, but I don't think he's playing as impactfully, like that superstar level that you're after. And so I agree with like the way you phrase that they're not being, Allen and Payne are not being as impactful as you'd like and as this defense is designed for them to be.
One thing I would say on John, I know it was a big point of emphasis this year at the big O-line masterminds meeting to try to stop John Allen's hump move. Like, that is become one of the more difficult codes to crack in all of the NFL in terms of offensive linemen. And I think that is really, to me, what's been the big glaring difference is when the hump move's not working, can you go to something else to try and generate pass rush? That's more so why I feel like he's not really impactful in the pass rush game right now. And then with the runs, it feels like, and it's hard to tell these guys not to do this because it's what makes them special. The play doesn't care who makes it, is the way that I will phrase it. If they just had all 11 guys in their gap on these runs, then like they don't hit for 6 and 7 yards. You stop them for a 2-yard gain. It's just, I understand what they're going through. They feel like they got to make plays, and they feel like if, jumping out of my gap is going to make the play. But if you don't make the play, then you're kind of screwed defensively. And that's happened a lot. And it happened last year when they needed run stops the most. Even when they had Chase and Montez last year, like that is the reason to me defensively they struggled at the end of the year. Cleveland comes in your house and runs the ball all over you. You couldn't get a stop against Saquon on the second Sunday night game running the football. So I think that's a problem that has continued into this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's hard because they did, like, there's actually some good stuff that they do defensively on Sunday. I mean, they 4 of 14 on third down is a good day at the office.
Yeah.
And if you had told me that was going to be the situation before the game, I probably would have said they would have won. And really, up until those last 2 drives in the fourth quarter, like, they were playing pretty good ball, like 19 points, and you're not getting a lot of support from the offense in those first 3 quarters either. And you're playing decent ball, and then in the gotta have it moment, they can't come up with a stop. Like, they've got the 4th down conversion on the BSJ PI. Then the last drive is just super inevitable. You're like, oh, well, they're not going to get a stop here. And you give up the final 10 points of the game. And that's ultimately how you go from 19 points and a solid performance to losing 29-26. And I think it's also important to remember, though, like, that's the NFL. Like, those are the margins. Is
right.
Like, great teams are good 97% of the time. Bad teams are good 94% of the time, or whatever it is. Like, the margins are small. Can you do it 97% of the time? If so, you're going to win football games. If not, you're not. And that's how you give up 500 yards and 29 points and, all the other things they gave up, all the season high number of first downs that Seattle got, the explosives that they gave up. Like, it's all there, even if they were able to bow up a bunch on third down after giving up some of that stuff. But you wear yourself down because you're out on the field for 80 plays and you see the result at the end of the game.
I think something that was, and I said this during the postgame, the thing that was most disheartening defensively was the final possession. Because I just feel like, and tell me if I'm overreacting here, there was just no situational awareness, I felt like, from the defensive backs. There's no way you're playing, and I understand the style of defense that Jack Del Rio plays. They play their DBs a little off. They're trying to give you cushion. It's a bend but don't break. They're doing all of that to prevent giving up the big one over the top. And naturally, if you play off, it's easier to get beat deep. But in that situation where a field goal beats you, you got to be more aggressive at the line of scrimmage in terms of getting hands on DK Metcalf. There's no way he gets 2 free inside releases on the easiest pitch and catches that you'll ever see from him and Geno Smith in that moment. That was something that was kind of frustrating me because it's like, well, maybe I'm just looking at it too simplistically, but you got to get hands on the guy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And Logan and I talked about that this morning. And actually, we talked about that in Take 5, which is out now that people can check out. We did a breakdown of that drive, and then we have the full film breakdown tomorrow. But I was like, why? And he's basically like, this is how they run it. Like, this is they ran that pressure, for instance, that they get the slant on the first completion of DK. They ran that pressure 2 other times in the game, and you play it the same on the back end, and like, it worked. You're counting on the pressure getting home. It doesn't, and then you give up the slant. But I think that's kind of the point, is like, you can't just call the same stuff when the game situation is different. You give up a field goal earlier in the game, it's not that big of a deal. Like, you know, as an offense, if you don't score a touchdown, that's not a good drive. Okay, so that means if you give up a field goal as a defense, like, that's an acceptable outcome. You can win games giving up 5 field goals. You can't win games giving up touchdowns. But when you lose the game, if you give up 1 field goal, your calculus needs to change. And it does feel like the lack of situational awareness is a huge issue and has been under Rivera, has been under Del Rio. And I agree with you that, like, shoot, if you get beat on a double move, just grab the guy. Like, take the penalty, whatever, but you can't let the easy stuff go. And I don't think BSJ play like, I know on the second completion he's playing for the corner route, which situationally makes some level of sense, right? You don't want to let them get out of bounds, run another play.
Right.
But you got to play that a little bit tighter. You have to be a little more willing to take that risk there. And I just didn't feel like they had a good feel for that situation at all. Those situations are hard, right? It's 53 seconds. They've got timeouts. Like, that is a tough ask for a defense, but it can't be that anticlimactic, like that undramatic. Like, we can't just know that they're screwed from the time that they get started. That's too easy.
It was tough. And going back to Juice, like, he got a lot of flack for like the penalties that he had on the drive leading up to that. But I think he's playing as good a football as anybody in their secondary, man. It's rare that he's not in the hip pocket or on a completion. He's got to get better with his ball skills. That's why it was, a third or fourth round pick.
Yeah, his ball skills
didn't have
brutal.
the interception production. Yeah.
Well, it's not even interceptions. It's like, you're right there all the time, and then there's completions on you. Like, yeah, you get a couple, but there's a reason. Like, there's a reason he gets so much action is because quarterbacks aren't scared of him. And the other thing too, and I started the show talking about this on Monday, or yesterday, is he's a really solid number 2 corner. He's being asked to be a number 1 corner right now, and that's too much for him. Like, he's fine going against plenty of these guys, but you put him against AJ Brown, you put him against DK Metcalf, and like, yikes, bro, that's not good. Take a quick break, come back, more with Lynnell. We'll take a look at the offense next. Overreaction Tuesday, the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, and always live on the free Odyssey app. The Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Lynnell sticking with us for one more segment here on an Overreaction Tuesday. All right, let's take a look at the offense. Give me your hottest offensive take after this 26-point performance where Sam Howell throws for 300, but they really were not good for a lot of this game.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait to get to Sam, who I thought, just quick teaser, I thought was brilliant once again for the third straight game, showing a lot of really high level stuff that if your favorite quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes are doing it, he'd be getting that type of praise. I think he's playing at that high of a level right now. This is something that happens with this team. We tend to locally, I guess, hyperbolize the talent that we have here in-house, because multiple times this season we've seen it. The wide receivers aren't playing with the detail maybe that they should be playing with. And when you put it in that context, I think it makes me a little bit easier on Sam and his struggles toward the beginning of the season, because those problems still existed. And when he's playing well, and then the offense is bogged down the way that they were, like you mentioned, for the first 3 quarters, not really having a ton of consistency, I think it has a lot to do with, first of all, Seattle's secondary is brilliant. So it was a tough matchup for our guys, period. But, I expected guys to make more plays. There were some contested catches that weren't made. Guys just not doing a good enough job getting separation. That was an area that kind of concerned me, because we talk about this wide receiver core as if they're one of the top 2 or 3 in the NFL. They are paid like they are a top 7 group, and I just didn't see that from them on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think Seattle's secondary did a phenomenal job, but like, take your good versus my good. Hopefully my good's good enough and their good's not good enough. And Jahan was a complete 0 in this game. Terry had some moments, and I think he also was missed by Sam a couple times where you're like, oh, that's a big play. And some of them are like, Sam just didn't throw it. There's one of them where like he's open for a touchdown deep on like a post corner situation or a corner post. And there's just enough pressure that I don't think Sam feels comfortable like stepping into the throw. And he winds up checking it down, and it's on like a 3rd and 3, and it's the one where he hits Logan Thomas for a first down for like 4 yards. And you're like, okay, you know what? We live with that. He knows Logan is releasing late after chipping. He gets a first down, like no problem with the process. But if the pocket holds, he's got Terry wide open, just has to throw it into grass for a touchdown. So Curtis, first game back, like, is he a little rusty? This was probably one of his least effective games. He's been pretty consistent all year, but like at the end of the day, you're right. Like, you need more from these guys. And I think it's ironic that we're talking about it, the two of us in this segment, because I think you were correct a couple of weeks ago when you're like, Sam Howell is holding this offense back. And at the time, the way he was playing, like you could make a serious argument that that was the case. However, now you look at it, and Sunday specifically, he's the only reason this offense did anything.
Yeah.
Like the run game was ineffective outside of the one drive. The offensive line is continuing to give up the same amount of pressure. Sam is doing a better job of avoiding the sacks and getting the ball out. He creates all the big plays off schedule. Like B-Rob on the first one, all he's got to do is run straight. Does a great job. Like, good job catching the ball, fluid, get down the sideline, make good decisions. But like, that's a Sam play. The other play that B-Rob has that's like identical, same kind of situation. Sam's the one making this thing go, which is like, I guess is good long term, big picture. But for right now, like, someone's got to help the guy out. This is not how to win football games, and it is how you are relatively ineffective for 3 quarters.
I do want to like revisit that comment because I think we both said it here about what the offense looked like through the first 3 quarters. I can agree with you. It just wasn't consistent enough. I wanted, it's more of like a question than an overreaction.
Yeah,
I thought Eric called a really good game. It's just when Washington is so reliant upon the quick passing game, I want to see them get to their counters a little bit sooner because it felt like Seattle started squatting on everything. And for the folks out there that think there are no ancillary benefits to the quick passing game, double moves and deep shots are the ancillary benefit, and it helps you create that naturally. Felt like Washington didn't get to it quick enough, and that's part of why they were bogged down. Big picture, though, looking at what Sam and Eric did, because I think we need to start putting them together when we talk about the success of the offense. I'm just floored by his ability to take as many steps in the right direction as he has since that first New York game. And that's kind of like where I'm judging him pre-New York and post-New York. His internal clock, and that's the way I'll put it in layman's terms, is so much more sped up. And when I say sped up, it's not a bad thing like he's rushing. He's just feeling pressure so much better. Like his peripheral is improved. And that just all comes from being a young quarterback getting snaps. I worried genuinely at the beginning of the season, could he overcome that problem? And for all the folks that are upset about the amount that Washington's throwing the football, he doesn't overcome this problem as quick as he does without the high volume of pass attempts. Being put in that situation over and over and over and over again, I think is helping him. He's seeing things better. He's finding better answers to the test is what I'll say. I think, like you said, the stuff he did off schedule is just, it's top 10 quarterback stuff. It's Dak Prescott. It's Kirk Cousins. I think if he's going to play like that, he's for damn sure in that conversation. And I think it changes the way you need to look at the offseason moving forward, especially since the darling that everyone's drooling over, Caleb Williams, can't play on schedule. I'd rather have Sam Howell than Caleb Williams at this point. And I think moving forward, the mindset needs to be, and I understand there's 7 games left, so you don't want to jump the gun. But if he continues to play like this, you get to a point where it's not worth trading up capital to go get another quarterback instead of just filling the holes around this guy, because he seems like that he's got it. But I'm still not sold on him yet. I want to see it more. But if he's going to show this, he's the guy.
Yeah, no, I think most of what you said there is not an overreaction. I am not deep enough into the draft and studying and knowing Caleb Williams. I mean, obviously he hasn't been as good as people had thought this year at USC, but also like he was supposed to be God. So there's that. It feels a little crazy for a guy that is seen as like one of the better quarterback prospects to come out in a while to say like, yeah, you wouldn't rather have that guy if the choice is in front of you, Sam Howell or Caleb Williams, but it's not that. It's Sam Howell is already on your team. You'd have to trade stuff to go get Caleb Williams. Is that worth the downgrade? And I would say no. And also, I agree with you in the level that Sam is playing right now. It seems like he could not just be like, okay, he's the 17th best starter in the NFL, and that's good enough. What can we build around him on a little bit cheaper contract? Like, no, he could be a top 10 guy like next year if you get a really good O-line in front of him and maybe make his job a little bit easier schematically with some of the choices. I don't know that I fully agree with the idea that if you just, like, by dropping him back, like the baptism by fire, it's now justified. I think there were times that was like overkill, and I still just think like the best way to develop a quarterback is to set him up for success and put him in a game plan that wins games. And like philosophically, the amount that Eric Bieniemy runs the football and the little amount that they work on running the football is detrimental to their chances of winning. And there's like schematic advantages of a team thinking that you're going to run it. So stop giving those up. Quit making it so hard. Sam Howell was pressured 30 times in this game. Like, that's crazy. Wow. The PFF number says 30. And so earlier in the year, we're talking about a 10-11 sack game at that number of pressures. And he got it down to 13% in this game, sack to pressure ratio. So he is making massive improvements, and that's great. I don't think he needed to take as many hits earlier in the year for that to happen. So I think that's a slight overreaction. But I do think the level that he's playing, the stuff he creates off schedule, the big time throws that he has, all that stuff is legit. And I would say that's not an overreaction, say he's a top 10 guy. And I would say it's not an overreaction because it's something that has come out of my mouth already this week. But like the but here is, but to be considered that you have to do it consistently over time. And we have not seen that yet. He's had 3 really good games in a row. Up next is the opponent where he looked totally inept. So let's see what he does against the Giants. Not that he has to throw for 300, 3 touchdowns, no picks every week, but like, can you avoid the stinkers? Can you avoid some of the pitfalls that you had earlier in this year? We'll see. My bet would be on yes, but like, we'll see. Anything else from the game? Quickly, we got time for a 2-minute version. We got 53 seconds, couple of timeouts. Oh wait, that was a little too close to home. One more take.
I guess we can go there. When your defense can't get stops, it doesn't really matter whether you go for 2 or not.
I don't like, yes, but that's, to me, that's such a silly take, because like, then what's the point? Like, nothing matters then.
And then the only thing I will argue in that direction is the momentum that your defense gets if you do get the conversion.
So I think this is why I go for 2. Momentum and like urgency, right? Yeah. There's a different psychology for both sides. If you get the 2-point conversion, and obviously if you miss it, you miss it. So you lose, but like they lost anyway. So that to me is a bad negative argument. Like, oh, well, it's going to be tough to get this stop. Well, okay, well then, take your risk that if you do get it, it's a win and you don't have to play any more football. But think of the psychology, right? Hey, you go on the field, you get the stop, we win the game. Versus go on the field, get the stop, we go to overtime, right? Win the game. Also, offensively, you now have the ramped up pressure of, we need to do this, otherwise we lose. The kicker gets on the field. It's a more intense kick. It's not if I miss this, it's not a big deal. It's, I got to make this or we win or we lose. So like, I like that ratcheted up intensity, that ratcheted up pressure, but we'll see. Or I guess we won't see because we know what happened and you don't get to play it again, but we'll see if it comes up again later this year. All right, that's Lynnell Willingham with Chris Russell tomorrow. He's got some overtime this week on 106.7 The Fan. Make sure you check him out, all of those places. Lynnell, thank you, sir, and we'll have you back on an Overreaction Tuesday next week.
My man.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.